Good to see you. Um,
Good to see you too, man.
there are lots of things going on, and there's a new person, somebody called Davis. Or I don't know. I can't remember their bloody name, but she's 70 years old, and she was on the same street as
Hmm.
James was in Reading, and this is the third.
Oh,
This is the third person talking about Reading and all the stuff that went on that James was partly put to jail for.
okay.
There's a
Yeah,
big
that must be.
base in a lot of child stuff happening in Reading, otherwise known as Reading, just outside London. And she seems to know James from a long time ago. Apart from that,
I'm gonna turn
I'll just sit quietly.
this on. I don't know if that made any difference. Okay, so how old is James?
I
Are you
don't
allowed to
know.
say?
The last information we got was that um, I can't remember the name of the woman, but it was a woman who seemed to correspond with James quite a lot, and she talks for 15,000 years. She got the last visit with James before he was released into secure custody. Okay,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so I don't. That was 2019,
Okay.
and he was about to come. I made an appointment to see him on the Friday, and that was refused. And then this woman was seeing him on the Saturday before he was released. That's a week before, and I was refused. But she then says, "Well, why isn't Miles being allowed?" And then they then allowed me in to see him. And James was saying
Yeah,
he
I
was
think I
going to
remember that.
see, he was taking advice from John Irwin. And I told him that
Okay.
John Irwin has been nothing but say a lot of shit about you. But that was the way James was going to be. And he mentioned something about being released into secure accommodation in the southwest. And that's it. I got some kind of a
Mm-hmm.
roundabout message that due to what's her bloody name? I've lost his names. Of Max's handler,
Sarah?
Sarah,
Sarah?
she'd written some kind of a letter to because he was subtly pulled out of an open prison and subtly thrown back into this more secure prison, category B. And my understanding is that he's not allowed to go online anywhere. He's not allowed to talk to anybody in the Basis Project, and he's
Mm-hmm.
because that's by the orders of the Home Secretary.
Okay.
Now,
I
Tim
swear
Refat,
to God, I saw him.
Tim Refat has done a wee bit of a look into this, and he knows what they do to people like us in jail. And
Mm-hmm.
but James was going into the black; he was going into the dark, and I think James's mission, because we're being invaded by all this dark matter stuff, dark matter souls, all this stuff coming through the Rothschilds and all the stuff that's taken over the world and how to kill us all and make us into whatever. I think, and this only occurred to me a few days ago, I think he's on mission really in the dark side to do something important. And that only
Mm-hmm.
came up to me
Okay.
recently. But
Mm-hmm.
Duncan Davis, we were going to all have a party here. We're going to have James, we're going to have grid keeper Duncan Davis. And I don't know how much you know about Duncan and how much progress he's made, but he's become a very high initiate and trainee to Tim Refat. And he's been doing stuff.
Duncan from the US?
Duncan Davis.
Not from the US. I don't know that person.
Duncan Davis and Sohail were the three trio. You had James Casbolt, grid keeper, otherwise known as Duncan Davis, whose lineage goes back to the King of England.
Oh, okay.
He's a
Never heard his
former
name.
direct, yeah, he's very tall,
Okay.
got the glasses, bald, unlike me. Um, I've bloody hit myself. That's what I have. Anyway, and the thing is, Tim Refat lives in Brighton. And do you know the background of Tim Refat?
A little bit.
Tim Tony Start Refat. Tim Tony Start Refat wrote the detailed books on Russian remote viewing stuff, and he was the apprentice to Colin Bloy, who is MI6's magic man, and that's a direct lineage back to Aleister Crowley and all that stuff.
Okay.
So MI6 was doing very heavy psychic warfare stuff and took out the Russian Federation and all that. I mean the Soviet Union and all that. Now he was Refat was tasked with doing the same to the Chinese, but the Chinese have a different energy grid system and it didn't work. But he's now over effectively talking with the Chinese. Okay, but
That's
he's obeying the rules. Now MI5 tried to kill him millions of times. I think they're trying to bump me off. I've had a rape charge leveled at me at the end of July, just after my YouTube channel was taken down, and just after my conference. And I'm just having another conference on Saturday, and it's absolutely packed with speakers. Suddenly, I've got double the speakers. It's absolutely, and anyway.
Excellent. Good to hear.
So the point is that Tim Refat got key rings and certain things from Colin Bloy, this guy Colin Bloy. The Colin Bloy did a big thing in the Love of Light community. There was the fountains of Brighton, and everybody had a meditation.
Yeah, you mentioned that before.
And that is a key thing, that he's been able to deal with all that. Like Colin Bloy was getting everybody to think about the Brighton. Brighton is where the energy comes into the British Isles, or at least the land mass of Great Britain. And the elite, or whoever you want to call them, have been putting windmills in this channel to block this energy. And a lot of the positioning of the windmills are all on energy lines to esoterically fuck our energy field up. And he's done a whole lot of stuff. And I was asked by Duncan to come down and video a number of really key interviews with Tim Refat. And this changed timelines and all that. Now, one of the other guy who works with James and Duncan was a guy called Suhail, who looks a bit like an Egyptian or a bit Arab. Now, he had a life form in his back, which was like a mini crocodile thing, which is intertwined with his back. And as soon as I was going to do that interview, this thing went ballistic, okay, in his back. Cutting a long story short, this guy was, Suhail was brought in to Brighton General Hospital. They removed this thing, and that's when Brighton General Hospital, he was taken down deep into the underground secret base there to have the rest of the operation with Delta Force nurses to have this thing taken out of him. And that they don't care that he even allowed him to bring a phone in. So they don't care that we know that there's a deep underground military base and a hospital. And as he went from the modern hospital down the various lift shafts, the color of and the style of the paintwork changed to the old style, like during the war and all that stuff.
Interesting, because that's how Bill said his security clearance was identified with indigo.
With your mask on, it's very difficult to hear what you're saying. But anyway.
Bill said that indigo, that's how they used to. Indigo was his security clearance.
So this all fell apart, and lots of things happened, and I recorded a lot of stuff with Tim Refat. And then they started doing their own thing, and Tim Refat's now left the country and he's in Vietnam, and Duncan has been learning a heck of a lot about the complex number space. Refat has successfully defeated Lucifer and has adopted the role of Lucifer in terms of having he has created hell space specially for all the sons of bitches who are fucking us over right now. And we did a whole thing going down Brighton where Duncan and his girlfriend Annie, and they all were good mates with James, and they have been doing a whole lot of stuff. And the most recent stuff is the Grail State, where they created
Mm.
the Grail, but they reversed all the energy fields so that instead of our energies being taken to the Elohim and stolen from us, it's all been changed. They fucked over the Masons, switched off all their power, fucked off uh, switched off the elite, the Masons, the church. Any churches connected with Rome, all cut off, right?
I think it had, this came up yesterday, Miles, is Leo Zagami. So he needs to leave the United States. He's the primary issue of interfering with using his Masonic ties and Vatican I ties. So that's what this is.
Well, it's a little bit interesting insofar as I bumped into a guy from the Church of England here who's doing some deep research, and he's talking about, he's a little man from Northern Ireland, and he's a former Catholic who's joined the church and doing some deep literature and research for them. And we randomly met and whatever, but he came to my local pub, which I can't go to now because of this charge which was leveled at me, which is a setup with the British military to get me on a charge. And I have been, I was arrested, and I told them what happened. I brought this woman home, to her home in the pouring rain. She was completely out of it. And I left her in the house, but I did not go into the house. So I made sure she got home. She was collapsing. She was completely out of it. But then I realized that she'd been programmed, guy from British Army, to the extent that I just recalled that when I walked straight in, I walked right beside him. I was standing right beside this guy who was busy programming this woman, asking her, "Do you know Miles Johnson?" But he didn't realize I was standing beside him when he said that. Now, cutting a long story short, that I have heard nothing for almost 4.5 months. And I've been told that I'm being followed and tracked, all sorts of things going on, and which has happened to me all the time. I mean, I've been putting stuff on the Irish border, pirate radio and stuff. I know when I'm being followed and all sorts of stuff. But obviously, you know when you're being followed. And then, there was a possible assassination attempt on me about three weeks ago. And when I got to this girl's funeral, the funeral of her husband, I got a phone call from somebody, which I won't mention, surprised to hear that I was still alive. So that was Friday. That was Friday 3.5 weeks ago.
Okay.
So anyway, just
Question for you.
moving on.
Do you know who Tim Collins? Do you know who Tim Collins is?
No.
Tied to Iraq.
Yeah.
Well, Aaron Green Hicks is a Collins, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think a lot of this is stemming from Aaron Green Hicks. And basically when she saw Max the first time, I was there. So she and her bloodline networks of the Rothschilds in the US have been commandeering the West Coast through the Navy and her ties. And I believe Tim Collins, who is British, who was working in Iraq, he's got a large history in Iraq war, was brought in by Aaron Green Hicks under misguided intelligence. And so there's now a reorganization happening because Aaron was directly probably tied to some of the mischievousness that Lorian Fenton was trying to cover up. So there's people in California that tried to use Aaron Green Hicks instead of the network that was laid down by my husband. So this is almost a port war going on in the west coast of California. And Erin's out. She's blown it horribly, which is no surprise. But, you have to allow for people to show their cards and let them screw things up horribly. And then the fallout of everyone they lied to, they have to face. So that's where we're at. Yeah.
So she seemed to be very brave when she made those interviews with me and Kerry about the fake Jews and all that, the Khazarian or Ashkenazi Jews.
right. And I'm not putting her information down. It's you cannot you cannot substitute somebody who is not the right person into a role and thinking it's going to work if
Yes,
they're not the right person.
and,
You can
and
try, but it won't work.
yeah, well, it hasn't.
Right? Right. Amen.
So where does this bring us? You're smiling.
Well, this is it. This is it. Is that we are at a place now where like it's a wheat and chaff type situation, and organic wheat and chaff, not dogma wheat and chaff. We're talking about people who have legitimately put their hearts, souls, minds, everything on the line to do good work. Whether they had the check mark of a religious institute or not is irrelevant, because really it's about God, who is a being of energetics that is superior than any building or dogma, right? So that's where we're at. We're coming through the dogma. We're coming through to the people that are actually hauling ass and doing good work.
Well,
Yourself.
I sense this. This is now the time, really.
Yeah. Yeah. So amen. Yeah. And it's tied into Ireland. It's tied
Yes,
into Princess Scotta. It's tied into the Rh negative bloodlines, the original Skivanthians. Is that how you say it? Skivanthians? I
yeah.
can't say it. You know what I'm trying to say, right?
Is this the day done on and all that, the original bloodlines prior to the great catastrophe?
I believe that is tied in, like it goes up into Russia, and um, but it's Ireland. It's Egypt to Ireland,
Yes,
right?
yes,
Would you agree?
yes,
Amen.
absolutely, yes.
Yeah. So
That's why
uh,
I'm gonna have some kind of connection with that as
I know
such.
that's why I said you're playing Gorbachev in some timeline right now.
Yeah. Jesus fucking hell. I can't. I don't even. I can't. I have. If I do that, no, that just looks stupid.
There you go.
No. Anyway,
But
I've
yeah, so
probably been walking around
recently,
like this for about a week. I've only no a couple of days. I really hit its. Anyway, the point about
I've
that is that was why I think I was posted in Ireland or put there and to do stuff to wake them up and to change things that went on there. And I was really disappointed with an awful lot of the people that I did a lot of work with in the radio business because they were lighting up. They were completely free. They were really positive and creative. And then something was done around about 1992 to really fuck all that over. Um, but what shocked me is the scale on how the Irish have allegedly just capitulated to all this garbage. But this afternoon, I got a video from somebody in Belfast on how they filled the whole city centre, and that's a big deal for people to. That's where they do things when they do things in Northern Ireland. It's outside the city hall, and the place was absolutely packed, and that gives me courage that they are, you know,
yeah. Did you see Hillary Clinton was
oh,
used as chancellor, inaugurated into a university in Ireland? Did you see that?
yes, that was Queen's University. That was in Belfast. Yes, now that's got a
What are
lot
your
of
thoughts on that?
that's got a lot of connections with some heavy stuff. There was one scientist there who was working in Antarctica, and he got film of some very strange black energy ray technology. And that was when I was at school. And I actually he sent some color slides taken that he took in Antarctica. And he, at the time, and we're talking early 70s when I was at school, long before you were born. And
Mm-hmm.
he gave us the slides, but when he then next went back to he was part of the British Antarctic Survey, he was dead within 24 hours with an accident.
Mm. Mm.
But he was from the Queen's University of Belfast, so they are clearly involved with some very deep stuff on that level. And
Interesting. Okay.
I have a relative. My father's sister married into the Haddons, and they're all very brainy. They're all doctors. And one of the daughters of the Haddons was posted to Antarctica. And her name's called Rachel Haddon. And I've been trying to sort of talk to her, but she won't talk to me, won't reply. But it means that my family have got some kind of connection. Now, the other thing which has happened is that where I was born and where I grew up, in the town of Lurgan, you know, when the Black Goo meteorites came in and they peppered the southern hemisphere around about Venezuela, which is why the Nazis, no, they're not really the Nazis, it was really 1930s why they went to Antarctica and they set up a base in Thule Island or Thule Island in the Georgia ring of the South Georgia line of islands, which was the whole reason for the Falklands War. Now, the commander, he was a commando, he was Royal Marine. The guy who actually blew that place up has been in this house, and he spoke at the bases and explained what the base was. But what he said on camera, a guy called John, a very sensitive man, who was the man who blew the place up after they got over 400 interlocking crates of sentient oil out of that base. The British brought a submarine, a cargo ship, and two sort of cruisers. And they pounded the base with shells, blew the living shit out of the place, but not before they brought this stuff out. 400 interlocking crates, which interlocked like the teeth on a zip. And these were about 1.5 meters high and about roughly 2 meters in length, all interlocking. And that was all taken on a cargo ship. And then his job after all that was taken, it was also at minus 20 degrees Celsius in a blue ice. There's a kind of living ice in Antarctica, and it's blue. And it has certain properties. And my understanding is, so that was the reason so that was all taken to this country, and that's where the sentient oil has been. They tried weaponizing it after the Falklands War, and a lot of those scientists in the civilian side and the military side all killed themselves, anybody working with that. And that's really where the story on that runs cold. But I was allowed to mention that on a TV show which we recorded here in 2015, which is repeated about once every 4 or 5 weeks on the TV here. And it's all about the great UFO conspiracy. And I was actually filmed on the River Thames, in low tide, underneath the Secret Intelligence Service, or the MI6 building in London. It's been on James Bond. And I was recorded there, and I was allowed to talk about the sentient fluid and the black goo. And that show had Max in it. And that was around about the summer of 2015. And of course, very soon after that, we went to Poland, and the whole thing fell apart there. And ultimately, he died.
Did you have you had any further recent interactions with Max, to your knowledge?
No. I sometimes would have a feeling, but my understanding is that he was brought, when he went over to the other side, he knew what he was going to face when he came back. He died once already, you know that. He died, and then
you said he made it very clear he was hard to kill. He would come back, regenerate.
And then they got him bouncing on the trampoline, and that's when they were offering him up for sale. They were trying to reprogram him, and I swear, I mean, Sarah stood on my stage that summer, 2016, and she described in great detail the process used to take Max out. And then there were a number of attempts on me after that, because there was a temple of Set in California tried bumping me off and so forth. But do you remember a Brit called Oliver Marshall? He was around the UFO scene, and he made a very good film called it was his only film, and they murdered him. He told me that they were trying to destroy me, and within he had 3 brain tumors, and the third one got him. So they killed him. Oliver Marshall.
I don't feel anything that Sarah gave is very trustworthy. I think Sarah had her own agenda, and James Rink was the one running her.
Right.
And sent her in to infiltrate Max. And Max made it very clear that James Rink was a troll
Right.
and a shell. And that's important that Sarah was sent by James Rink to meet Max. So to me, we gave Sarah the benefit of the doubt. Everybody deserves a second chance. Everybody deserves a clean slate.
Yeah.
She abused that horribly. And she took advantage of the fact that Max would fall on his sword, that he, whatever he was struggling with, he still tried always to look out for people he cared for. And he definitely cared for her, and she took advantage of it. I mean, we see that in the letter perhaps that she wrote. So yeah, she probably had some legitimate issues with Max and some legitimate issues with Casbolt. But her place in her guilt, she will never accept her place in guilt. She will always make it about squirming to make it everyone else's fault, and never admitting that she is, setting people up and hurting people, and preying on people. She won't admit it. She won't admit she's tied to Podesta. She won't admit that she basically, it's bad. It's all bad. And she lied. She set people up. She used people. I mean, she's a survivor, right?
Yeah.
But there's different kinds of survivors.
Well, she's now involved with the UFO Megacon with Bob Brown in the board of directors there.
I just shake my head. She's just a liar. So anything they try to build with her is not going to work. She's just a liar, and it's sad. She's had so many chances to just come clean and just be like, you know what? Here's the deal. It was a really messed up time. I was scared. I loved him. I was panicking. He was pulling away. I acted poorly.
Well, he was actively leaving her. I mean, he said, Miles, don't talk to Sarah.
Absolutely.
I will. And when he got to Poland, he did a really good job. Max was very, very shy. He practically could not, when he did the first appearance here, he was absolutely, stage fright and everything. And he talked to a friend of mine, Miriam, who's a tremendous empath and healer. She's a very tall Dutch lady, and I'm helping her do some of her videos. Very, very close friend of mine. And Max absolutely just was, but as soon as he left Sarah and was able to separate from that, he was just on his way. But there was another agent there called Kieran Lee Perrin, who I think sabotaged things there.
You mentioned that.
And he helped paint this house. In fact, he probably helped paint that wall. When I moved into here, he was here, and I did videos with him, and he was all matey and all the rest of it. We put a whole night on for him at a conference, and then days or about 2 weeks before that Polish thing, he started writing stuff on the internet, absolutely, wiping me out, saying around black porn sites and dark
that was
web.
Sarah.
That was Kieran, and then Marie Kayali read. Sorry,
it was Sarah.
That was Sarah.
That was Sarah's involved. That was Sarah's involvement. Yeah, Sarah's not. She doesn't. Yeah, James Rink. James Rink is the one that got a hold of Casbolt's handler codes, and I think he got stuff from Preston Nichols. So he was involved with pitting Casbolt against Haley. He was involved with Sarah and Max, issues. Rink is the little troll handler with all the little troll codes, pinning people and spinning them out.
Well, it's
Rink.
interesting that when he did this documentary, which I complimented him about it, about Nazara, and he re-released it, Nazara, and he did a whole lot of very detailed stuff on Francis Bacon at the start of that documentary, and then leading on to Saint Germain, which he claims he channels. Now, I've been doing videoing the lecturing here in England for the Francis Bacon Society, and they're very
Cool.
nice. They're very nice people, and they're very gentle.
Mm-hmm.
But these are key people who know the details of the coding of Francis Bacon and Shakespeare, otherwise known as Shakespeare, on the whole thing about that whole thing. Now, he got information from them. He actually was a member of the Francis Bacon Society and was able to he was helped by some top people in that society, which he used on that documentary on Nazara.
Well, you just mentioned earlier that there was a whole problem with the energetics of the Masonic network. There you go. Rink is not good. He has never been good. Yeah, that's the issue right there.
Well, the thing is, I've invited him over here for a secret space program conference in April.
Be careful. You might consider.
I mean, I know he well, I think there's going to be difficulties of him getting here then.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't like being this blunt, but when it comes to this stuff, especially around Max, Rink was literally filming a snuff film of Max dying. Rink was actively involved in Max almost dying at the first Supersoldier Summit. He was the one that pulled Max into that apartment and allowed him proximity to massive amounts of pills, and then filmed Max overdosing and thought that was just normal. Like a snuff film person would be desensitized to that kind of stuff. So to me, that's who James Rink is. He's a nasty little troll. And Max called it a long time ago. I'm sorry.
When I was at Broadstairs, I think it was, and I was getting the first interview, not the first one, but the interview with Max and Sarah when his grandmother died. And that was just the day we had a really good time in Canterbury. Mm-hmm. And that was a really great time. And all these agents, you can see all these agents all pairing off. And in fact, he identified a couple and he explained to me, when you identify them, they're out of the game. And there was a couple who, as walked off, one of the women said, "Oh, hello, Miles." But I've had a lot of that sort of activity here. But the important thing was that he was then triggered. We went to another pub, met him again at Broadstairs. I think it's Broadstairs, where Charles Dickens wrote all that stuff, the Pickwick, whatever the hell it was. But he got triggered and he started drinking 400-year-old bottles of brandy and was completely drunk. Now, about 4 hours later, I thought this is this is going to happen. And I then did an interview with them. And now I found the original media, and I think it's worth putting that out.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing. So I would just say,
I said I would never do that, but once you see,
and I would be happy to help. I would be happy to. It would be an honor to help. Yeah. I would be very protective of this, and I know you've mentioned before, so is Vanessa. But I would really consider stressing to you again that Sarah was never on Max's side. She was literally under Rink, and Rink is probably connected to Podesta. And so when Max found out the proximity, closeness of Sarah to Podesta, that's when he fell on his sword for her, to try and get her away from that stuff and those networks. And so I would definitely say that Rink is an infiltrator, and that your whole charges, everything that you've been charged with, probably is coming through Sarah and Rink targeting you.
I wouldn't be surprised at that.
Unfortunately. Yeah. So let's just plead the blood of Jesus Christ over all that stuff and pray to God that they are rebuked and send Holy Ghost reproof, because they are nasty little trolls that are plugged into. Rink was also plugged into, I think, Texas, and Texas has been under a great deal of blackmail of China, and we're just
Now,
starting to just
now
get
what?
that next layer.
Now what? The thing about this is there. For some reason, in the days of pirate radio in London and in
Mm-hmm.
Ireland,
Mm-hmm.
there were some very, very talented, a couple, two or three, about three very, very talented people who were building the transmitters. Right now, one was a sort of competitor to another, and one of them, a pair. Now the point is, these two gentlemen have just been murdered in the last 2 years. Now,
Mm.
after all this time, 1987, 1990 is when all that sort of finished. And I then started another pirate. Again, how the hell that was kept on the air and why it wasn't raided in the first place on the Irish border. And we ran that for 9 years. Now, what was involved with those stations was some kind of thing where if you contributed to it, you got a huge amount of protection and assistance, and really just could do stuff. And we came up with this phrase called the intelligence transfer sequence, which is actually a computer protocol for entering stuff into a computer, but it worked. It was so the point about that is recently, i.e., 20 just before the lockdown and all this stuff started,
Mm-hmm.
I get contact. These guys are really came up with like such incredibly efficient transmitters. And the genius behind this was a guy called Roger Howe. Now, after like a 20-year gap, suddenly he's murdered. And his business partner, he was in the process of selling and dealing with stuff, and he was engaged with the Chinese. Now, he subsequently was murdered only days before my conference in July and about 2 weeks before I was arrested. Now, what he was talking about in terms of China was they've got half the world's AI companies. His business partner, Roger Howe, was vitriolically absolutely did not want to have this new transmitter that he developed in the hands of the Chinese. And that's why this guy called Scott Ince, he came over and he was about to sign himself and leave the company when Roger was hit by a hammer in the head, and thrown out of his apartment in Croydon, where he was then picked up by, he was dead, and he was picked up by ambulance people. But there was a whole mystery behind that, where it was where they made an impression that he was still alive, and they kept on doing resuscitation with him. And the point was that Scott was talking about this detailed stuff, and it was as if these transmitters were channeled. Now, the point is, what I'm saying is that when I ran the pirate, there was some kind of interdimensional intrusion in the transmitters. And this is where I saw the scuttler for the first time, this crab type thing inside the transmitter, which dissolved and moved away. And there was also what I call fluidic space involved, where there were times when I would need to get a step ladder to look over the top of the transmitter to do some kind of adjustment, or there were times when I could just reach up and do it. So there were major errors in that. Now, this was some kind of consciousness transfer device. And Roger Howe was a genius, and he boasted to try and get a 1 kilowatt transmitter into a 1U little thin rack, at the time when everything was 6 feet tall with knobs and buttons everywhere. So he was an absolute genius. For some reason, they wanted to contact me about this, and this involves the Chinese. And when I got fired
Okay,
from
so this reminds me. This reminds me of William Stillings, Brett William Stillings, and he talked about oscillators and the gravitational field that's created around oscillators that is so healthy for you, and it actually creates the right frequencies for your body to rejuvenate quickly.
Yes.
So that's what it sounds like. Okay, keep going. Sorry.
Well,
About the
they would,
Chinese.
yes. This is something to do with stuff like that. The simple the simple circuit in a radio is something which is operating in complex number space, which is something that Tim Refat has been teaching. Um, the whole thing is all about the complex number space. That's what the Masonic
Yeah.
black and white squares are about, because you're flipping from 90 degrees to another one and so forth. And that's a 2D representation of it. And this seems to be something connecting with all that. Because I don't actually know why on earth these two guys would contact me 20 years later.
Okay.
Or rather,
So this is
one of them, and
yeah.
how he was killed days before the conference in July. But
Okay,
what
so this
you're
makes
talking
me
about
think.
in the Chinese, something there. Because Chewie has always been working with Rink, and she's Chinese intelligence.
Chewy.
Crystal, very nice, very polite,
Okay.
very attractive
In London?
Malay Chinese. Yeah, she lives in London and she does a whole lot of stuff with Rink.
Okay. So I know the Asian Trust. So there's different groups of Chinese, obviously. I believe there's a group within the CCP that is actually religious, like Buddhist and or Hindu and or Muslim and or Catholic and or Christian, and they're hiding it in the CCP under the guise of just conducting business. So there are actual people that are undercover spiritually involved, but they can't publicly be like
Yes.
outwardly
Yeah.
about it. Okay, so there's that group of people, and then there is the Asian Trust people tied to Soros and to Prince Charles
Prince Charles, yeah.
and Katy Perry and India. So
Now,
the Asian Trust came
just
through.
before you go on, Katy Perry directly connected to Max, and
To
the
Orlando.
ceremony that Max and Orlando Bloom did in Canterbury. And Tim Refat,
And then they went uh,
which
to New Zealand. They also went to New Zealand, Orlando, and Max, right?
I didn't know they went to New Zealand.
I think so.
When did that happen?
I think it was like some kind of like training camp that they went to together in New Zealand.
Sorry,
And there's a lot of skull and bone stuff there.
Max and who?
Orlando Bloom.
But my understanding from Dave Marrow is that Max was specifically excluded from the after death training. So he was almost selected to go past death and not come back. That was at Burnworthy Manor, allegedly.
Well, from what I heard is that he had gone through something that precluded him from the acting, like the next phase that would have made him into an actor. And that
That
he
was something to do with that ceremony. The ceremony that he had with Orlando
right.
Bloom. Orlando Bloom came through as top dog in that particular ceremony, which means Orlando Bloom was going to go forward and Max wasn't, in terms of the acting thing.
Right. But it actually was a godsend because it allowed Max more freedom to actually develop his skill set without the controlling factors that would have been on him. So
Absolutely.
he's now free. Yeah, it was the best thing that
Because
ever happened to him.
Refat and Duncan are talking about the baby that they had is potentially Satan incarnate on the earth or something like that.
Daisy.
Yeah. The a
I
physical
remember Max said it wasn't going to be theirs. I believe he said it wasn't going to be theirs. He said something about a baby and it wasn't going to be that one.
Now, the thing about this is Tim Refat and Duncan did a thing about this whole thing. It was not complimentary on Max's side by any means, but it was something very technical. And I don't know the correct word. I can't remember the correct word, but there are 4, possibly 6 things that Tim Refat did in his shorts, drinking Viet Toc beer from Vietnam about 18 months ago, where he specifically addresses this issue about the Magroid man or something, some kind of, but that issue is specific about that ceremony done in Canterbury and what Max was selected for and what actually happened or what became happening.
Well, see, and this is why I felt so strongly when Max was in the first Super Soldier Summit. I felt that there was some twinning that had gone on between Casbolt and Max to pit them against each other. And my whole thing was that I wanted to override that twinning at the pit where they would be against one another and strengthen Max up so that he could help Casbolt instead. Because I think this is where they coming together as a team will override whatever Orlando's darkness
Well, Max
stuff.
did say about James in prison, because he was in prison only round the corner here. Do you think James Casbolt being in jail down the road here, a mile or 2 away, was some kind of coincidence? And I'm here.
No.
So, but there are hints. Well, I don't know. We'll see. I get a few. I sometimes I get a few people fishing. Have I ever heard from Max? But that's there's. I don't want to lose the train on this, but that's James. On the very first time that James went public, and he was here at the Barge Inn, Max was going to be there.
Mm-hmm.
And but a very close friend of mine, a very beautiful woman, Royal Navy, her family's from the Royal Navy, Jane Shattuck, a lovely woman who keeps talking about upstairs, and upstairs tells her this or tells her that, and also the other planet, which went through what we're going through insofar as that they generated these other creatures, which has now deprived them from proper reproduction, and this is now happening here. In their world, they destroyed all the labs, but it didn't stop them from degrading as a species. Now, she came to that event, and she sat at the very front. She's very eloquently spoken, and as a sort of a dark redhead, very striking woman, wonderful lady. And she explained that she'd met James as part of a distant cousin of her family when he was about 8.
Interesting.
So she has so that's another connection. Now the thing is, she lives in Coty, in Farnborough, and the Farnborough area between the M3 and M4 is a heck of a lot of ET stuff going on there. It's beside the Pirbright Institute, which did this whole COVID thing. There's a hell of a lot of stuff happening in that area, and I've been speaking to a woman who was there when the ETs of some form or other compromised the Marconi Defence Base in 1974, which brings the whole involvement with the UK military, and the ETs are intricately connected. But they're all, as Duncan explains, all the ETs but one are against us. There may be a couple that he hasn't heard from.
Okay. I wanted to revisit something. Hold on one second.
So there's a lot of...
I wanted to revisit something you said about the DVD, the German DVD submarine.
Yes, absolutely.
Task Force tied to the Black Forest. Was it Black Forest or...
there's the New Forest in
where the
England.
UFO landed in Germany.
Okay, that was in the 30s.
Mm-hmm.
Right, that would be General Carreri's. Yeah, it could be.
Okay, And then the lady that was shot on Alec Baldwin's set, she grew up on a submarine base in Ukraine, tied to, well, Russia, when like that area before, I don't know. But her father was tied into the submarine. And then Ghislaine Maxwell's trial started last week, and she had her submarine license. So we're in a place right now where the submarine stuff is really important. And you made a point of mentioning the DVD and the German DVD. And
Who
I just
made a
thought I
point?
would
Who
revisit
made a
this
point?
topic with you.
Sorry, who made a point of mentioning the
You
DVD?
did in our,
Yeah.
I believe it was you in 2017. Hmm. So I was just going to see if
Well,
we could
the
revisit
key.
this conversation, because that girl being shot and then Ghislaine Maxwell, I don't think she died. I think that was like a squib to fake her death. And I think that she's being pulled into witness protection to assist in some intelligence that Ghislaine Maxwell is giving.
Now, Kathy Morgan has done a lot of research on Robert Maxwell and how he was connected to taking control through his Paradigm Press. I think it's called Paradigm Press. He took control of the scientific review publication business, which means an awful lot of information that would be sent for peer review never made it. So that
Mm-hmm.
skewed the actual fundamental methods of how science approves, yes or no to certain sciences. So that was one of the key things that Kathy's doing a lot of really deep research on this. And do you know her? Do you remember her? She's living in
I don't
County.
think so.
She's living in County Kerry in Ireland, and she was MK Ultra'd and had a number of children and was abducted, and a lot of things happened to her. She knew Marie, and also, but she was one of the first people that I interviewed way back in 2010, just before I but she has done a lot of work on Maxwell.
Okay, great. Well, and see, I think that this is where we're kind of like, there's been all these networks that have just always been so corrupt, and it's finally taking all of us to come together and like in clean hands, good faith, kind of put it all on the table and be like, here's what I got, and it's pretty gross, and here's what I got, and here's what I got, and let's see what we
Yeah.
can do to fix this, like, which is awesome. And I think that that's where Prince Andrew kind of came in, is that he had the power to be able to sit in a position where he could navigate with the Royal Navy in a way that could actually facilitate the first steps. And it was layers, right? There's layers of this stuff that nobody got to see what was really being done in the
So
last few
so
years.
is
But
is that
there's
is
been
that
so
why
much.
is that why Andrew was mixed up with what's his name?
Epstein?
Epstein. Yeah.
Yeah, I think because Ghislaine has intelligence through her father to Mossad, and she was a submarine driver, so she had dual citizenship, and I believe that this is naval intelligence work, partnering with Mossad, partnering with Prince Andrews to the Navy in the UK,
Because one of the
and
things,
then
sorry, the
and
some
then that
one.
lady that was shot, her father was a submarine base as well. So there's
Now, when did that
definitely
happen? That
some.
I didn't know that this Baldwin thing. Which movie?
Oh, about a month ago, it was
Oh,
called Rust. He accidentally shot the director
oh
and killed
yes,
her,
a fake gun.
but
There's
I
that
don't
fake
think
gun problem. It's as old as the hills. It's even a Columbo. That's probably straight out of a Columbo episode, or no, I think it's well one of those novels.
so. I think they faked her death to pull her into witness protection because it's tied to some intelligence that Ghislaine is releasing in her testimony
That's
to Ukraine.
one
To
of the
Russia.
things that Michael Shrimpton mentions is that the DVD do have these special submarines,
Mhm.
which have the air conditioning and the other. You see, if you're always going to be going around in the Pacific or the Mid Atlantic, there's a whole lot of equipment you don't need on a submarine. But if you're going to be going up in the Arctic and you need a hell of a lot of stuff to keep the bloody place warm. You don't freeze over, and that makes a different design of submarine. And submarines which can go pole to pole have to have a hell of a lot more I mean, and that's where
Power.
Michael Shrimpton was set up for blowing the whistle on a nuke, two nukes which were taken from the cursed submarine to be used as low yield nukes during the Olympics in the UK in London.
Hmm.
And so he spent a while in jail, and he wrote the book Spy Hunter: the secret history of German intelligence, the DVD. And he also got an NSA satellite to, I think it was Hamburg. It wasn't Hamburg. It was a major German city, and he got the video on the satellite. He had info that got Bush. I think it was Bush Senior walking out of a car straight into the headquarters of the DVD, and that was when Bush was head of the CIA, which directly ties the CIA in with German secret intelligence.
That would make sense.
So this
last election, the 2020.
Yeah.
The 2020 election, I ended up calling the German office of the Secret Service to report some things. And then within about a month, there was reports that a server was confiscated from Germany that had real-time data collection from the election from 2020. So they know exactly what's gone on with this election, whether it was or wasn't compromised, whether it was or wasn't Biden, whether it was or wasn't President Trump. They already know. They already know exactly what's going on, and they have that data secured, and they secured it through a task force, I believe, that came out of Alaska.
Yes, Alaska. Now, what's happening in Alaska? Sweet.
Well, there was a state of emergency declared in Alaska. William Barr, I believe, was the one that did that. And he was, I think, tasked by the First Nations or the Native Americans in that area to make this known, and then there's the Sarah Palin joke. Well, I can see Russia just across, and everybody thought she was a ditz, and that was stupid. Well,
it's interesting that Sarah Palin was used in that movie by the Finnish.
Yeah.
The
Dark Side of the Moon.
Yeah, and all that stuff.
So, yeah, the Nazi movie. Yeah, and it was actually really interesting.
What about this new kid on the block, Gogan woman?
I don't know.
She's been interviewed by Kerry.
I don't know who she is.
She claims to have very high level intelligence clearance, right up to a 30th, like 30 levels above top secret and all that, and knows more about things going on.
Oh.
Kim Gowan.
What's your take?
And seems to be very well informed, but rather too well informed. And she's runs this United News Network thing, which doesn't really exist, but it does. She's had a couple of interviews with Kerry Cassidy. She's very well spoken and very explains an awful lot. Too well informed to be silly. And certainly there will be questions asked about whose side she's on. But then nobody will actually declare what side they're on, I suppose. But Kim Gogan, she's been on one or two of the interviews with Charlie Ward on BitChute, a few of the other things.
Oh, is she a financial? She's talking about financial stuff, right?
Yeah.
Financial. She does in the trusts and all of that. Yeah. Okay, yeah, I have seen some of her work.
Yeah.
And it was very interesting. I think I understand where she's coming from. I think it's people in Florida and Podesta. I think she's tied in with Podesta. So the One People's Trust or whatever, that whole group, Heather Tucci and all of those people. So it's just part of that crew. And, I if people are trying to do good work, then more power to them. If they're doing authentic stuff, I mean, we need that, right? If they're not, then it won't work.
Yeah.
That's the end of the story. Yeah.
But what about
what
about your side of things in terms of your
So I've just been patient, right? Because I mean, I was there with Max and I did my very best to hold that frequency for Max and Saturday. to make a jump to more authentic places away from Rink. And you know, it was a really special time, as you've always said, and I will never knock the fact that Max and Sarah had real love and they were trying to help each other, which is, you know, true.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it is. It is. I think push came to shove, and Sarah's allegiance was more to fear than it was to trusting and faith. So she chose to maybe carry on her allegiance to people that were using her. And Max did everything he could to try and help. And then once he did that, it was like, okay, I've done everything I can. I'm going to move on now. And then that's when I think there was a lot of, you know, rocking the boat because I don't think she thought he could do it. I don't
Well,
think she thought he would do it.
she really hated my fucking guts. I mean, I actually had her the day after I phoned her to tell her what happened with Max, and she's, you know, it was a terrible thing, but you know, she absolutely, you know, she was on the Kerry Cassidy show the next
Well, she
day,
was on the
and
phone.
I it was
She
she was
was on the phone. She lied. She was on the phone she was the one telling them when Vanessa said she heard somebody saying like, you know, give him the milk and all of this stuff. That was Sarah. It was all
yes,
Sarah. She was
I
a part of it, that
I
ritual.
absolutely think that's right. She knew far too much about what was going on, and
She was
she
a part of
knew,
it. It was a coven ritual.
yeah, and she knew
Yeah.
and pretended, because the way she was absolutely livid that she wasn't invited to the conference, and so
Oh
and
no.
then of course you've got this guy
Yeah,
Tajinder
no.
Gill. I mean,
Horrible.
he
Yeah, and that ties into the Asian Trust and India having control of Katy Perry and Orlando Bloom, which could have gone in a neutral way, but I believe it was more Asian influenced. And so we're dealing with the Asian Trust. So there's layers, right? And so when you build on Sarah's bullshit, it doesn't work. And that's what's happened. So, I mean, in some ways, that's great.
yeah.
People are falling into their own traps, you know.
Well, I know that
Amen. Um,
I know a TV show did a thing with Sarah and asked her to a number of whole range of questions, psychic stuff and all that. She got everything wrong. Absolutely
Well,
just
she just recently went to France, so I don't know what's going to happen with that. I think whatever, it doesn't matter. So you asked me what's going on with me is I've just been patient. I've been waiting for all of this to just expose itself, right? Because I'm not going to hurt her. I didn't have any intention to hurt her, but she did want to take as much as she could in her anger, right? And so I just have let it roll, and it's rolled, and it's not gone to the place that it was supposed to because she's not integrity based. So there you go. And so now we're in a place where that's becoming more and more apparent every day. And so, you know, it's just damage control because she's hurt people, and there is a wake of damage that she has created in her games that Max says she likes to play. So, you know, I'm just trying to make the best of what can be done now because it would have been too much for me to fight because I'm not legally an American. I married an American. I applied for my citizenship. I went through the process. There were crimes committed against me during my immigration process. That is a special status I'm in. Nobody will ever take that away from me. So I've had to allow for the America First, which was Sarah, the American,
yeah.
to have her run. So she had her run. Okay, there we go. You know, that's where we're at. And now I have to like just pick up the pieces and hope there's enough left to um, rebuild what should have been done. And Aaron Green Hicks plays into that. Aaron Green Hicks is part of that bullshit. I'm sorry. Rink is part of that. My husband tried to tell Carrie in his interview, he tried to tell her. He mentioned the Las Vegas Metro Police. He mentioned his time in Las Vegas. We made a point of doing everything we could to clean hands, good faith, give everybody the information about what my husband was doing without exposing too much. That was directly tied to the NXIVM shell accounts that were exposed, the hundreds of accounts, the shell accounts tied to NXIVM, Harvey Weinstein and Epstein. That was my husband's work. He gave that to Carrie, and she kiboshed it and poo-pooed it and put him down and changed the topic. Whether she knew what she was doing or if she's just like a coward or if
I
she was just
I
ignorant,
I
because
think
that can be
she's
her MO too.
I think she's under a spell from this guy, Mark Phillips, Captain Mark.
In
I
Well,
think he's
okay.
sort of
So what about the handler in Australia with the cane?
I don't know that.
Five Eyes guy.
Sorry, it paused there when you said that.
She's been Well, there's the guy with the cane in Australia that was running her. The Five Eyes guy. Five Eyes in Australia.
I don't know that. It's news to me.
So when they did their interview, my husband and Carrie did their original interview. My husband had people within the Anon community watching, and she was paid to basically give out his intelligence behind his back, to give his name and make sure that somebody could find out who he was before he could go too far. And so, it went back to Australia and Five Eyes stuff and that's been compromised. Five Eyes has definitely been compromised. Look at what's happening in Australia right now.
That's scary. What's happening in Australia? Ever so slightly.
Well, and it ties into Hong Kong and the fact that China didn't honor their two-party, one-state agreement for 50 years. So China's in dishonor, and the rest of the Commonwealth countries need to hold China accountable for that. And that's why they're able to take, the actions that they're taking in Australia.
I think we've got a problem here that we have the CCC party, not the Conservative Party, but the Chinese Conservative Party, because our what's happening here is complete. They are, well, I wouldn't vote for them again, but they're clearly there's some. So that would mean that there's other factors.
Cindy McCain had a lady from Hong Kong dressed in yellow at the Halifax Security Council meeting, and 2 years ago, a year and a half ago. And that woman, then after she was in Halifax, went to Toronto, and from Toronto went to London. And there was a big push in the financial community, in the Asian financial community in London. So Cindy McCain has been running stuff through Arizona, and it came out in WikiLeaks that the McCains were using the First Nation money to fund ISIS. So I believe Cindy McCain is one of the head ISIS ladies. So there was something that switched where the Hong Kong Chinese started to take control of Cindy McCain in the last few years. And then Steve Bannon, I mentioned this before, I think Steve Bannon got on a boat and read a declaration with some of the Hong Kong Chinese in New York port to establish a new port in New York. So we're dealing with trying to recover from the 100-year banking charter ending, and the Constitution was directly backed by that 100-year banking charter that ended in 98. Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton were in office during that time. So there's so much that goes on here that's in the background, that's been hidden, that is what my husband was aware of in his naval intelligence. It's what the Kennedy Irish Catholics created the SEALs for, is for this time, to navigate this time. And so he was part of that project that was like SEAL Team 6, which was black. He's part of the odds and evens, so they alternate. 6 and 9 were both black. 6 public, Tim Osman, Osama bin Laden was caught by SEAL Team 6. And, that was so that he could bring SEAL Team 6 into the public. And then they had that really strange helicopter death where, they would never put that many SEALs on one helicopter. So whether they really did exactly, die, I don't think
they did exactly the same.
I don't think they did die. I think they used this whole situation with Tim Osman because he apparently died of kidney failure. So he was, a story that they could run to expose Team 6, to bring them into the public, to get them out of the black projects being used nefariously, and then pull them into a task force, a secret task force, which is probably where my husband has been for the last 7 years, is with these other SEALs that faked their death, to do the work that was tied to Prince Andrew's, directive.
That's
So
good
it's
stuff.
good. And I mean, it is good. And at Prince Philip's funeral, they alluded to the fourth bridge. And then just recently we heard that his will is going to be sealed for 99 years, which means there's something going on that's so big tied to that fourth bridge mandate. And they actually showed the bugle with the tapestry hanging, which was a call to war for the British naval intelligence.
Our friend in Japan, Benjamin Fulford, is saying that that Queen Elizabeth declared war with the Five Eyes on the Khazarian mafia about 3 weeks ago.
Interesting, because look at what's happening in Australia. They are under China. It's gross. So scary. And that's a Commonwealth country, right?
Yeah. And it's all happening under the Queen's. This is all happening, all of the main countries imposing this draconian, horrendous, to use a term, attack on their people are all Commonwealth countries. And the Prime Minister of New Zealand was trained by our friend Klaus Schwab. Hello?
Mm-hmm. Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I think we had a
that
break
makes sense. Yep. And this is where Max comes in, because Max was in Poland when Obama was there.
In Stockholm.
And Obama was Brzezinski's, Yep. And Obama was Brzezinski's protege. Most people don't know that. And Brzezinski was Polish. So there is a huge network of super soldiers, Navy SEALs, spec operators, private military that have faked their death and are part of a task force. And I said this in the last interview we did in 2017. I said, I bet you anything, when Donald Trump made that declaration of that human trafficking was an international emergency, like that it's a serious problem, that was on Max's birthday, that was the flag to wave that this is happening, that this task force has been in the background this whole time since Max died, and that there is some real heavyweight things going on. And with Ghislaine Maxwell going into court now, things have finally shifted.
What happened in court? Right? They're going into court?
Ghislaine Maxwell.
Yes.
Ghislaine Maxwell, her court case started last week.
Yeah. Do you feel that, I mean, the whole point about Ireland and the whole point about Poland is that the DVD client states of the old Germany, and the situation with Max and the BBC, the BBC were here interviewing me about Max at the time, and they were telepathic. They were communicating telepathically. The BBC girl to cameraman, and I had a black chair and a white chair, and I was just sort of posing to so they could get a shot, and just to help them out. And they would not let me sit on the white.
Loved it.
They would not let me sit on the white chair.
I loved you and that.
That was good fun.
So I just want to say this: if we do this again for the BBC, I would like to do it because I was angry. I was disgusted with the disrespect that was shown to you and to Max through the BBC. And I understand that was a huge step, and they went for it, and they did great considering. I give them credit, but at the same time, I want to do the next one because they disrespected you guys, and I didn't like that, and I was heartbroken by some of the twists. And then,
the
thing is, it was good. It was very good.
The thing is, I sort of brush that off on a blink of an eye. But if you
I
not
know.
so if you're not aware of it or whatever, it's a
I
little
know.
game.
And you have to. You have to. And I understand. And it was wonderful considering, and it did a great job considering. I am so protective of Max and of you that I was like, nope, that was disrespectful and that should never have made it. And that was horrible. I didn't like that. No, nope.
Well, what are you going to do now? If you're having a Christmas or anything, or
No, I'm pretty much, I'm still kind of like holding that post. I'm manning the post for a lot of things that happened before I met my husband that I didn't even understand. So I've just been that person to energetically hold the line, hold the line, hold the line, hold the line. And I pray, that the next turn is going to be President Trump and Ireland, and taking that another.
I really do
And
hope Ireland. You see that the problem with Ireland is that Sinn Féin is 100% DVD. The IRA
okay,
was a front for German intelligence. That's why
interesting.
when because of the way that they behave, the way that their protocols are, and the way that things happened, um, the way that they assassinated Martin McGuinness.
Okay,
Do you know who he was? He was number 2 in Sinn Féin.
tell me more.
Uh,
Okay,
you have
I looked it up a little bit after we spoke last time,
see
but
what
it's
happened.
not my area.
What happened with him? He's the second in command of Sinn Féin, and he's up there in front, and along with the other one called the one with the beard and glasses. And they did a mind hack on him. I forget them. Martin McGuinness and Jerry Adams, right? Now there was a joke when the number 3 in Sinn Féin was exposed as a British spy, right? Now the joke was that, and the joke was, oh well, the British intelligence goes higher. There's only 2 people you've got left: Martin McGuinness and Jerry Adams. But the thing which gave Martin McGuinness away, which is why he was terminated with a very specially genetically selected poison, which was attributed to him alone,
Mm-hmm.
was it was a photograph
Mm-hmm.
on the front page of the Belfast Telegraph where the Queen had, and the Queen, why the hell is the Queen visiting Ireland at all? I mean, there's nothing special going on, but she's made more visits to North and South of Ireland in she has in her entire reign in the last 2 or 3 years. Anyway, the point was that Martin McGuinness's eye contact with Queen Elizabeth was too familiar. And that somebody got that shot and they put that on the front page. It says wasn't an eye to eye with 2 people who were political adversaries and all that. That was somebody who was getting on very, very, very well with Her Majesty the Queen. Next thing,
Interesting.
he gets a very rare terminal cancer, and he's out of the picture within about a couple of years. And they made a film with him, and they got him and Ian Paisley together. We're all really mateys and buddies, best buddies. And the only reason that a stalwart opposite leader like Ian Paisley would have suddenly got matey with somebody is because they were obviously rather too closely connected. And he was taken out using the DVD. As Snowden was, Lord Snowden, when he wouldn't keep his hands off the local kids, he was blown up by MI6. No, but German agents in Ireland. Anyway, that's all old news.
Okay, so I have to go here now. Do you watch the UFC? The fighting.
The USB?
Boxing UFC.
I don't know.
UFC. Ultimate Fighting Challenge. UFC. Conor McGregor.
Is that a movie? No, I don't know.
Probably
No, I
it's
haven't
in
a clue.
development for Netflix, but I don't think it is yet.
Is
Conor
that it?
McGregor. He's a UFC boxing fighter grappler
Right. Okay.
from Ireland.
Right. I don't.
He's hilarious.
Yeah.
No?
No.
Oh my goodness.
That would have been on Sky Sports or something. I don't watch any of that stuff. It's probably
Oh
USB.
my goodness. So we're gonna deal with the Rink problem. We're gonna get all that BS that's been targeting you cleaned up,
Okay.
and you are gonna really enjoy Conor McGregor.
Okay. Well, I'll search that out. You wouldn't be a
He's
mad
hilarious.
fecker.
I'll send you some stuff. Yeah, I'll send you some stuff. But yeah, this is good stuff. Good stuff. I would love to see you do an interview with Conor McGregor. I would love to see you in Ireland, in Belfast. I think that's where he is. And he has something called the Black Forge, a restaurant hotel.
Right.
And that would be wonderful to see you do a conference in Ireland at the Black
Well, who
Forge.
knows? Who knows? You're tempting my. I'll have to get that sorted. And may it be able
Yes.
to happen. One of the reasons I'm putting this conference on
Amen.
in April, I want to do a secret space program conference in April, is to make the events happen that we can do that. Actual people turning up. But we'll see.
The Black Forge, that needs to be the
Black
next
Forge
event. Yeah, in Ireland.
in the big city of Belfast. We only have one big city, and we call it Belfast. The big city of Belfast.
There you go. I
God
think
help.
this is very exciting.
Well, that seems like a.
Who knows? You know who else is really into the UFO community is George St. Pierre, who's another UFC fighter from Montreal, Quebec, Canada. George St. Pierre. You never heard of him?
No, I don't follow that at
That's
all.
okay.
This is all complete.
These are basically
You might as well start
these are
quoting.
your next.
You might as well start quoting golfers or football players. 21 years of Sky
No,
Sports.
this is like it ties into the Jiu-Jitsu network.
Okay.
Krav Maga, Jiu-Jitsu. You know,
Could you type those
special
names out
forces.
on the text thing, just on
I
this,
will.
just to get their
I
spelling
will.
right? Okay.
I will send you links of their stuff, and this is where we're going, and I think you're gonna love it.
Well, as I had said, I saw today Belfast city centre packed with people talking freedom, and that encourages me that they're not all a bunch of drones. That they are waking up. They are.
Yeah, and see, this is where Connor is, and he's interacting with the local government. So he's somebody definitely that you should potentially look at having an interview with, because I
Now,
think it
I
would be
have to
excellent.
say that I was getting on very well with the Northern Ireland UFO people. There's a wonderful woman called Eva McConnell, I think, and we were chatting really, and I wanted two of them to submit something for my little summer conference we had, which were the first time we got a conference with living people out of lockdown. So somebody's eerie wigged on them, and they won't answer anything. I am absolutely. I am not welcome in Northern Ireland
It's Rink.
on
I would say
almost
that it's a
any
connection
level.
to Rink. Yeah, I would say it's Rink. Yeah, it's Rink and Sarah. Ah, I'm telling you.
Okay. I even sent stuff to the museum on the Ulster Folk and Transport Museum, and I gave them my archive of a lot of the radio stuff that we did in the 80s. And I got on reasonably well with them, but now they won't reply to an email and they just maybe somebody said nasty things about me. Shocking.
Well, I talked to a lovely lady last night named Penny Shepherd. Are you familiar with Penny Shepherd?
I might be not too familiar.
And she mentioned you, and she mentioned that she'd reconnected with Carrie Cassidy. So Penny's in Florida, and she's doing a very amazing amount of work with Megan Walsh I don't know if you've been following this, but John Walsh is the guy in the United States that had his son decapitated. And they created a legal precedent called the Adam Walsh Act. Um, well, that was a ritual, right? It was a satanic ritual that was created to push legal task through. And Megan is the daughter under the son that died. So the son was the firstborn, and then Megan, and she's exposing her parents. So Penny is being wonderful in doing a lot of the research into the fact that John Walsh, Megan's father, was basically being run by cartels, and it ties into the Panama Papers and the MXIVM accounts, the shell corporations in Vegas, and that he's just a shill and he's a gatekeeper, and all the people that are actually trying to stand up to help kids are the ones being, harmed by people like John Walsh. And John took her kids, and so I've been trying to get the word out that this is huge. This is a huge crack in the dam.
But that's another thing about Northern Ireland and all that. And John Dwayne is a guy that that they're essentially aware of secret space program stuff up in the North Coast. And the Bushmills distillery is taking sacred water, special water coming up out of the Babbling Brook right on the coast, as north as you can get. And that water goes down, is meant to be going to distill whiskey, or you don't distill whiskey, whatever you do to bloody whiskey. But they haven't had the Bushmills factory, which makes Bushmills whiskey, hasn't had a license to make whiskey for over 12 years. And John Dwayne is saying that the water is actually being used for some kind of fuel in the secret space program. Because RAF Machrihanish is only across Scotland, and it was all part of all that stuff, which is where the helicopter incident has happened to those Marines. All the best intelligence people, all the special branch people, all the Army intelligence people were put into a Chinook helicopter, flown across to Scotland, and they crashed in the Mull of Kintyre, all wiped out.
Or did they?
Oh, no, they were. No, well, they were dead. I mean, right across the mountain. But it was just before the peace process emerged, which gave Sinn Féin a major lead. And Sinn Féin is a client of the DVD. An asset, rather. Right. Well, I'll take that under advisement about doing something in the big city of Belfast. Try and make it a summer conference.
It would be very, very, I think it would be very successful. And I think that combining George St. Pierre and Joe Rogan, you're familiar with Joe Rogan?
I am familiar with that name, but under different sort of guises. It's relatively common. Joe Hogan. I would know him as a singer. There was a guy called Joe Hogan.
Okay.
Put that down on the...
Okay, Rogan.
Logan, Logan.
Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
R-O. Rogan. So
okay.
he is somebody, yes. So he's done a lot of stuff. He'd had Bob Lazar on his show from Area 51. Yeah.
Holy shit. Sorry.
Yeah.
Holy shite.
So we're doing good stuff. We're moving in good ways. And Conor McGregor actually distills whiskey. His whiskey is the Proper 12 whiskey. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
No. I've been stuck in a hole with this, being hit with all my sight coming down. I've over 14 hard drives all wiped out. Some of them specific on the disk to the content of whatever the file was, as if there's been something inside the disk hammering at the sectors on that particular file.
Well, basically, you asked me earlier how I'm doing, what I'm doing, and what I'm up to. Well, this is the whole thing. In speaking with Penny Shepherd last night, this is the full circle. So John Walsh is the one person on the face of the earth that understands that the work that my husband did before he disappeared is legitimate, because he was exposing the fact that the John Walsh, Adam Walsh Judicial Precedent Act is ex post facto violation and a constitution violation. So my husband did everything he could to get as much evidence into the court system, including the Attorney General from Nevada perjuring herself in regards to RICO. So everything that my husband did was to document that John Walsh's son's murder was actually a satanic ritual that he was a part of, that John Walsh, the father, was a part of. And this is happening now as Megan, the daughter, is exposing her parents as part of this, cartel that has been under duress, and that they're just puppets, and that whole judicial precedent was false, on false pretense. So it's huge, Miles. It's so big, and it's so good because it's exposing the gatekeepers that are in place that were supposed to be protecting kids that aren't. It's really good.
Well,
It's
that's
good.
that
It's
little
a
connection
blessing.
with Stella Fairburn. But I wish there was some other way of transmitting stuff, so it's not just snipped off the way things have been happening. That's a different type of transmission system. That's what I'm working on, so we can do this. And there must have
Very
been a
good.
reason why I was involved with pirate radio for so long,
Right.
and why the key people who are involved with that here were bumped off in the last 18 months. I mean, two really,
Interesting.
and it's the transmitter they channeled and the way that has consciousness, because I found out that medium wave or AM radio is telepathic. It's amazing.
Okay.
Even on a recording,
Medium wave. Okay.
what you would call the AM dial. But there's
Okay.
something
Yeah, that
that
makes sense.
simple amplitude modulation and the thoughts of the DJ. And there's a reason why, there must have been a reason why in Britain, the BBC National Network was kept on medium wave or AM radio for so long. They didn't
Interesting.
get
Okay.
access to FM until the bloody 1990s, and
So would that be like a Tesla
it was some kind of telepathic
knowledge?
control. And that's why they couldn't stand the radio ship, the pirate stations. It's something. Radio amateurs have realized this. Something changed when AM radio started broadcasting. And it happened. There was a change in human and consciousness or something. So that works. Okay. We'll move on from
All right.
there.
Well,
Listen,
yeah, and it's coming up on Max's birthday. So if he is out there in the ether world, moving in his sneaky ways, energetically, magically, God bless you, Max. I'm praying that Casbolt is doing good work. I swear to God, I swear I thought I saw Casbolt on the eastern coast of Canada in the last few months.
well, I know that when he was in jail, he was spotted in Jamaica, allegedly assassinating. There was a nightclub. There was a nightclub that blew up, and they used those nightclubs to throw an extra few bodies in to cover up what they've been doing.
Right.
And
Okay.
around
Question.
about that time, he was also seen in a Florida Air Force Base.
You mentioned, but last time we talked about the 2011 rules of succession changing and the Cab French Black community. And we talked about Prince Harry and Meghan and the mixed race protocols under the rules of succession. And recently, Rihanna and Jamaica, was it Jamaica or Barbados? Barbados.
Yeah.
Barbados just recently renounced the Queen.
Yes.
So there's something going on there that's probably tied to the Commonwealth issues as well.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Well, the Queen was meant to have passed on a couple of weeks ago, but that didn't happen, and she was allegedly there was going to be an assassination or something happening. So
Mm.
she was,
Well,
retired to hospital, and the November 11th thing was all she didn't turn up and all that. But
and
then,
then she got out in her truck and started driving around in
yeah,
her like
yeah,
outfit, and I was like, "Go Queen, go!" It was pretty cool.
okay. This is really good.
Well, the other thing about that whole Queen issue is that it was reported in the Mail and like the news that in 2016 there was an issue with the Queen. So it makes me wonder, what are we even dealing with since 2016? But I'll leave that.
On a cliffhanger until the next
Yeah.
exciting episode. Same channel, same time.
Amen. Amen.
It's really good to see
Live
you.
long and
It's
man
really,
you.
and when I was under a lot of attack, I really appreciated your words of advice at that time.
Okay. Yeah, I felt very guided to have your back. So I've done everything I can, and I think it's important. I think the work that you've done with everyone is so important, and it's not yet fully grasped people. And maybe that's a blessing for your sake. Maybe
Yeah,
when you get over to
I've been told
Belfast,
to lie low, so I've laid
yeah,
low, but it's still a hell of a lot just to reload things up. Where do you put it?
maybe we'll get you going in Belfast.
There must have been a reason why I was born over there. There's no way I picked up the accent. Okay,
Aw, well, good to see you, Miles.
and it's good to see you.
And
Okay,
yeah,
and
let me know um, if
ooh, yeah,
you're to be able to in any way.
I missed a bit of that. I maybe put too much movement in. Let me know what.
When your conferences are, and
Okay, there's
if
this. There's
there's anything
one.
I can
There's
do to
one
be part of
this
it.
Saturday. This Saturday coming. If
Oh,
this stuff here works, and I'm going to try and put that out as a live stream on the Basis Project Facebook site.
okay,
So, because I did a little test and I was able to do it, but I don't know. We'll see what happens.
awesome. Okay,
Okay. And then
well, keep me posted.
the next one I'm hoping to have is a secret space program one in April, because it's
Okay,
a year since the UK Space Command happened, and it's and we'll see. Okay, let's see about
okay,
doing something in Belfast in the summer of 2022.
amen. Okay,
And may
sounds good.
all
Thank you,
factors
Miles.
required for that to happen occur. Good night.
Amen.
Good to see you.
God bless.
Thank you.